So very, very warm welcome and good afternoon. I think we have finally succeeded to have a women all panel at Cyber Media after a long time. And hoping that we are able to bring some insights. We are on the eve of Women's Day celebration and we are having a small party here. So quickly, I will just request my speakers to briefly introduce themselves so that we get a better understanding on their expertise and where they are looking at working in their professional front. Gets on. Yes, it's on.
Yeah, hi. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rajeshwari. Worked in the corporate sector for about 15 years in sales and marketing. Have been in roles across several industries, including technology. Last 15 years, I've spent in academia at the IIMs and the XLRA, currently a professor with Great Lakes. Very excited to be on this panel because technology is close to heart and one cannot escape it.
So thank you very much to DataQuest for inviting me here today. My name is Mitali Nikor, and I'm the founder of a very small think tank here based in Delhi called Nikor Associates. We actually do a lot of work with governments. We advise a number of different ministries on gender mainstreaming. And one of the major areas of our focus is looking at digitization and the gender-digital divide. So I'm really looking forward to the discussion today, and a big thanks to Meenu for putting all of this together.
Good noon, everyone. My name is Sugandha Srivastav. I'm a senior analyst at Cyber Media Research. So I look into industry trends and technology and AI, what's coming next. So that's me.
Till the time we are able to address the technical glitch with the hand mics, I'll just pass it on. I think I can just check that. So just to give a perspective, we all talk about AI seeping into our lives completely. Okay, it decides who gives you credit. It decides your healthcare. It decides if your story needs to be ranked up or no. It decides everything on your front. And I just want to ask a question. Do you have an idea who's deciding all these decisions based on AI? How does AI take these decisions? Who's training this data? Not me, only you. So exactly the point that if you realize that all this data is primarily being trained by male and the elite, as we call them, of course, there is a sprinkling presence of women there, but it would be an eye-opener maybe for many that to just share a few numbers globally, only 22% of AI professionals are women, and this is from the World Economic Forum. In India, women account for only 14% of AI researchers and less than 10% in AI policy advisory based on a NASSCOM report. So that really gives a picture that how skewed this entire way we look at AI is in terms of presence of women. Sorry. And the reason we have kind of got ourselves together is to understand, they being from academia, she being from a research organization, she being from a consultant, that how can we ensure that there is more participation and presence of women in leadership roles when we are looking at building these AI data sets and the LLMs that we talk about, and ensuring that there are less biases, because we all talk about ingrained biases. But how do we really address it at the root level? So maybe if I could ask, a few points and thoughts on what if India's national AI strategy was written by women?
So that's a very good question. So I think a lot of things have changed thanks to AI, and it's a cliched truth that disruption has been caused, etc. But I think for academia, the counterintuitive question that's always interesting is, so what has not changed? Right? What has remained the same as ever? And I think if you try to explore answers to that, you find that there is a lot of human intuition, adaptability, optimism. These things have really not changed even in the face of AI. And therefore, when there is a national strategy being put together in the context of AI, women would probably look at addressing these things very closely. So today, a lot of data sets that go in for training for AI do have an inherent bias by way of historical data that's available in the market today. But I think in terms of just ensuring there is a vernacular representation in the data sets, for example, there is a more inclusivity by way of looking at sectors that have probably not got their due, whether it's like healthcare or maternity, primary education. Those things will certainly get a heads up when a national strategy for AI is being put together by women. And I think third, which is last but not the least, is the education sector will play a very pivotal role in taking this AI development forward in very meaningful ways. And I say this because a lot of AI moving forward depends on the input that you give it. And the input that needs to be given at multiple levels, whether it is the corporate sector, the student community, or the faculty training, education plays a very important role in giving the right input, right? So I think the education sector will get a very, very meaningful place in the national strategy.
I think, this question, Meenu, is very interesting because this relates to the root of what if any strategy was written by women? And then I'll come to AI, right? So I'll give you an example. What happens in India, if you notice, if any of you are following the numbers, when you're talking about the economics news, right? I come often on different news channels and I talk about the economy. And they always say, ma'am, आप ना gender वाला perspective मत लेके आइएगा, आप general perspective दीजिए. At which point I'm like, that if I don't talk about the fact that India's female labor force participation continues to be amongst the lowest in the world, I would not be doing justice to my brand and I wouldn't be doing justice to the advocacy that I'm doing. This is the difference between having a woman having a voice and a woman not having a voice. And I can also tell you, I work with so many women bureaucrats now. And they're all, in very senior positions as secretaries or joint secretaries, additional secretaries, in the state level as well. There are so many principal secretaries. If those women were not in those positions, in many, many ministries, we would not be seeing the gender mainstreaming efforts that we see today. Because while the Prime Minister has given us the moniker and the, path of women-led development and has laid out that 70%, participation of women should be achieved by 2047 as part of the vision of Viksit Bharat, and we are very grateful for that, but the implementation falls on the bureaucracy. And many cases, these women bureaucrats are the ones who say, okay, ensure that in your policy on logistics, for example, you are talking about the representation of women in the logistics workforce. Now, coming to the question of if our national AI policy is being written with sufficient women representation or led by a woman, I definitely expect that one of the things which will be centered will be the care economy. Exactly how, Rajeshwari spoke about it. Because why is it that the large language models today are existing in this form of chat, a chat GPT or a, sort of question answer form? It's a very male way of doing things. But when you start looking at the job roles and the time that women are spending, we know that women are spending a lot of their time on unpaid care work. And I do feel that a lot of applications of AI in the space of the care economy, in the space of, say, becoming an accompaniment to a person who's older, or you're looking at how your AI tools can be used for educational purposes and for children, this would suddenly start to take center stage. The second area which I really feel they would start looking at when we're talking about AI and tech is thinking about how can you do different tasks more efficiently, even physical tasks. And that integration of the phygital is something I do expect women will prioritize more because they want more efficiency because they have less time. Women are always suffering from time poverty because they have so much to do. And at the end of the day, I think these are the two major sweeping changes we would see if women were the ones who were writing these policies.
Sugandha, your thoughts?
So I think mostly points are already got covered. But see, my perspective is if the AI, if women are there and writing the policies there, So ethical consideration is something which will come because women are known for, taking more ethical ways to work. They are known for following laws. So I think ethical consideration is something which is really important because everyone is talking about, responsible use of AI. And it should be ethical. What's the ethical use of AI? So responsibility, the ethical ways, and the accountability. So all these things would come to forefront, means will have a, a face if women are there. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Mithali, so just continuing on the point that you made, that, we see a high number of bureaucrats who are women, who are kind of taking that leadership role, but it's still a very skewed figure there. So how do we ensure that buy-in, and we are talking about the 2047 figure, how realistic is it on the ground reality, and how do we see ourselves tied through that and ensure that we achieve that?
Yeah. No, I think, Meenu, very important question. And we are sort of moving in that direction. But I was also thinking one thing I should have added to my previous answer and relates to this. How do we create a massive number of jobs in an environment where we feel that AI is going to take over a lot of entry-level jobs, for example, right, in the knowledge economy? The way to think about that is to think about newer and newer sectors. And I actually think that one sector that nobody has thought about in terms of job creation potential is agriculture. And why am I talking about agriculture in an environment where we feel like agriculture, how will this contribute to GDP? But it does. Because food security is still a very basic need of any society. And if we can leverage technology, if we can leverage AI to make our agricultural productivity higher, to create more and more opportunities for women farmers, because the women are actually 75% of our women even today are employed in agriculture. And it's difficult for them to leave their villages or to leave their land holdings and come to cities. And we saw this even during COVID, where the return migration happened for families. But women never came back to the cities. We are still seeing a large number of women who migrated during COVID have not come back.
Come back to those job profiles.
So
Yes.
I feel like with AI and with technology, we can actually create more productive agricultural workers who can be women.
So Sugandha, just to add to that, we were also discussing earlier the biases that is already there. So example, if I had to hire more people at the agricultural rural area, the data is already set with a bias. They will not identify women as the core resource there. So, your thoughts and some data points there which you said, you could share.
Yeah. So if we talk about the bias, and if we talk about, women living in rural areas, and if we talk about specifically for India, so there's a study which says 54% of the women have never used internet. So how you think that you are going to educate women living in villages on technology and on AI, and use the drones for agriculture?
With
How
the
you
new-
will do
yes.
that? And if we talk about AI policies currently, so they are considering 100% digital literacy. So that's a huge gap there. One hand, we are saying 54% women have never used internet, and on the other hand, we are saying that 100% digital
usage,
literacy
yes.
is there. So how we are thinking? So I think it needs a revised consideration across the policies, and we need to think from a equality point of view, that we have this much of women workers. So how you are going to provide them, educate them, empower
And maybe
them.
make them more technically savvy also.
Exactly,
So Rajesh, very
exactly.
quickly coming to you, impact of AI in academia, and how can we ensure that inclusivity in terms of gender bias
Sure.
that exists?
So academia has a very important role to play in the society to advance this AI. So I think there are multiple stakeholders, and we find that even amongst the faculty members today, the willingness to adopt techno-literacy actually happens more slowly amongst the women faculty rather than the male faculty. So there is somewhere, I think, an inherent, even maybe a self-built bias, and I'm not blaming anybody for it, self-built bias that women have to overcome, that I may not be good at these things, right? So I think from the point of view of training faculty to become more techno savvy, AI savvy, looking at students, right? Students, we can have multiple interventions, right? From student selection, student assessment. Today, student assessment has become a big challenge after the advent of ChatGPT and LLM, because we really are not able to classify students based on what is original work and what is ChatGPT work. So we have to come up with inventive ways of assessing students by having an individual Viva OC or a debate and stuff like that, where personal interaction is higher. And also thirdly, in terms of simply research capabilities, AI has thwarted, or questioned the traditional research methods by coming up with so much of data from the internet and analytical ability, etc. Again, the women representation and research, while AI publishing faculty is just 10 to 12% compared to the other domains that you publish research in. While I think India is making a lot of strides in AI publications per se, we are, I believe, the number 2 in the world in terms of coming up with research publications in the AI domain, women still have a lot of catching up to do. I would only say that, education or academia is in the process of putting together an AI maturity model. Now, this model is supposed to assess the level of readiness of any organization to embrace AI. In fact, IBM Watson Discoveries is one such model that is working with organizations to look at their governance, their data setup, their analytical ability, etc., to ascertain at what level of AI embracing are you and how much you need to move forward. I would think something like that would come up for even maybe the gender within a particular sector, women versus men, and therefore classifying them at what level of maturity are you and what can we do differently. I think the key question here is that, to my mind, AI is a great enabler to close the gender bias, because today there has been a lot of paucity for women to do a lot of work, either collecting data, analyzing data, etc., which AI has actually fast-forwarded quite a bit. So women have been done away with that disadvantage. Or even if you look at office work time, technology has enabled a Zoom meeting or a virtual call, which has cut down the travails of women. So, once technology kind of begins to come into the picture more actively, and that I'm saying even in the context of AI, it can fast forward women development across sectors very well, because we can see how it will enhance women to do away with some of the handicaps that they had earlier, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so quickly, Mitali, we were also discussing on the gender digital divide, and you wanted to talk about the different worlds there. So a little bit of your thought, because as we also discussed that, we are designing and aggregating that, services through AI for women, rural area. But as rightly mentioned, are they even trained for something like that in terms of optimizing the usage? So, what about the divide?
So, in fact, what I believe, I want to also respond to something that Rajeshri said, but I'll come back to that. Sure. What I believe is that when we're talking about the digital divide, there are 3 or 4 levels of being familiar with technology. True. And as we know, a lot of people are saying that this generation, for example, this new generation of kids who are coming in, the Gen Alphas and then now the Gen Betas, are going to be AI native. Right? With that, you're being born in an era where, like, for example, Gen Z is social media native. We are still catching up with everything as millennials. But very honestly, when I look at the levels of divides, I feel like we are operating in 3 Indias. There's one India which is sitting here in this room, and all of us who are understanding what is the new development when it comes to AI, which is understanding what are the cutting edge technologies and who are adapting to these cutting edge technologies, and maybe even the experts of these cutting edge technologies are sitting here, the ones who are actually developing them. Then there's a second India, which is, a middle class India, which is starting to use these technologies that were developed by people in this room. But the third India, which is the basic foundation of this country, the largest portion, actually comprises of those women who don't have any familiarity itself with the devices. In fact, I've been and spoken to women in rural areas who are told, "Kyun chahiye tumhe phone?" Especially adolescent girls, right? Girls who are in school. Why do you need a phone? Why do you need to be on the internet? Kisse baatein karni hai tumko? Right? it's all about social norms and policing the behavior of women,
And
especially
stereotyping.
young women, with the idea that, it couldn't be because of education that they are going for it. No, it has to be some sort of unscrupulous purpose, in the minds of the parents that this is why my daughter is going online versus a boy who's not being stopped. And that's why even today when we see successful companies like Zoho, who are actually, present in many of the
Working the rural areas the most, yes.
they still have many more 90% women, 90% men.
Men, yes.
Because they are also not able to get women despite wanting to. So, and I think just one thing to, respond to what Arishri ma'am was saying, yes, technology does bridge the gap when it comes to flexible work and when it comes to, being able to work from home, things like that. But when we are speaking with employers, even in tech companies, they're saying, I want a female manager who sits in front of me and works. If she's working from home, I don't know if she's working or if she's cooking food for her in-laws.
Absolutely. Or caring for the children.
Exactly. So, this bias it extends beyond technology, and we have to look at how social norms can be influenced through tech rather than
Absolutely.
and using AI as a force for good.
Sugandha, you wanted to share something?
Yeah. So since we are discussing the bias, so I just remember an example. So recently I was studying and I saw a research which says that an AI tool, it made 35% times a mistake in identifying darker skin women. And it was only 0.8% for in case of, brighter skinned men.
My God.
So it's not about only gender, it's about the skin color also. So these things are there. And then there is one more case in a, giant e-com company, there was a there was a AI recruitment tool which was downgrading the resumes of women. So these kind of things are there, these kind of examples are there. We have seen so many reports coming in.
Absolutely.
So if women are there, these could be controlled, and we can look into a new kind of AI which is equal for everyone. Yeah.
So to echo the thoughts that women are in control, we are in time, and I'm going to maybe ask for one last bold move each of you would like to recommend to make that realistic and the presence of women in the AI leadership. One bold move.
So I think the International Women's Day theme this year is Accelerate Action. So the needle is moving, but it's not moving fast enough. So I would think that, for example, I would like to maybe look at a AI council in my institute, which is going to be headed by a woman. So we can look at these women-centric issues more closely in academia.
I would say that at this point, I would urge UN Women and the World Economic Forum and a few other international organizations to take an international pledge of AI for women. And all AI companies should be, urged, peer pressured in a way, because we know that diversity is a little bit under attack when we're talking about the US and we're talking about most of these AI companies being, actually headquartered in the US. Somewhere it's very hard today to advocate for diversity in AI. And this is where international organizations need to finally show some spine and come forward and say, we need to ensure at least 20% of staff across levels and 10% of leaders in every single AI company in the world are women. DeepSeek is doing it. DeepSeek is the only AI company where the developer is this Chinese lady, 22-year-old girl who has created DeepSeek. So if she can do it, everyone can do it. AI companies need to commit.
Requesting the social media amplification team to please tag these urges and to the right institutes. Sugandha.
Yeah. So these are the closing remarks.
Yeah, so one bold move as a thought.
Yeah. So I'll go with the, women present in leadership roles. So recently we have, I'm a fond of doing research and reading the research papers which comes
Absolutely,
up.
yes.
So what I have, seen in a research paper, like 45% of the women, they said that when they when they come up with an initiative which is having a complex technology like AI, so they don't get support from the peers and the management. So this is something which we need to look into. And there is one more research, one more report which says that if there is a diversity in leadership roles, so the companies, they outperform by more than 25%. So, have that learning from there and have more women in leadership roles when it comes to complex technologies. Yeah.
So we are good with our discussion. Maybe just a thought for the audience, and then maybe we can take some questions, if any. So as we celebrate Women's Day, it's worth asking, when AI policies are still written without women at the table, does all the Women's Day talk of inclusion truly mean anything? It is time to move from token representation to women actively rewriting the AI rulebook. So I hope we have the agreement from the audience, because I see a predominantly male presence over here. So we are open to questions, please. No right to ask the question. We would have appreciated that at all aspects, rather than just in the room.
They are assisted by Alexa and Siri, not Alexander, so they won't ask anything to us. Just imagine, Google Maps having a male voice. We won't trust them, maybe.
Well, since you've silenced the men, let's
Yes.
thank you so much, ladies. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Ledli
so
ma'am.
much.